Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to run through how you can set up your Stripe account so that you're ready to start taking payments for your NoCode tool, whether it's developed in Bubble or any other NoCode tools. I want to run you through how to create some products, how to create a customer checkout, how to create your first customer, and also how to integrate webhooks. We're going to be using Bubble within this example with Stripe, and you can use any platform that you're after, integrate it with Stripe, and using API calls and webhooks, actually connect your application with Stripe. So let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is jump on over to test mode. So over here, there's a little toggle that you can switch across to test mode. And we're just going to create a couple of products. So let's go ahead and create a starter plan, which is a monthly recurring revenue. And we might say $40 more pricing. Allows us to open up this, and we've got here a price of $49 billed monthly. All right, great. And we can actually create a different price via currency here. Now, what this will do is, for example, if somebody's in the US, it'll actually charge them a fixed amount. So instead of charging them whatever the conversion is on the day, we can actually say that this is $29 USD. So if somebody's in America, for example, they'll get charged $29, not whatever the conversion is at $49 Australian. I'm going to remove that for now, but it's very useful for later. Now, this starter lookup key here is actually really, really helpful when it comes to your webhooks. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say that this is our starter monthly. Great. We can go next. And then what we've got here is we've actually got a product, and the product can have multiple prices. So we're going to create another price, and we're going to say yearly, and we're going to say for $490 per year, they can get the exact same product. There we go. And we'll add that. Go ahead and do the same with maybe our pro plan, which might be $99 monthly, and another price, and $9.90 yearly. Great. For this example, I'm just going to leave the lookup key off. You probably want to leave that on yourself. Okay, great. So now we have two different plans here. Let's jump inside and we can talk through a couple of the different things that are within Stripe's products. So when you click onto a product, you can see here listed the different prices. On the right-hand side here, you've got your product ID. Now, these different IDs are very important when it comes to your webhooks and your logs. And you'll actually see down the bottom here, you've got these things called events, and you've got these things called logs. And a log is essentially any API request. So it's a post request or a get request, a patch, a delete request. And events is everything that's happening to that specific product. So you can see since the product was created, every single thing that's happened to this product. And it might look a bit complicated to begin with, but once we break it down, I think it'll become very clear. So a product with the ID prod underscore this, which if you look on the side here, this is the same product ID, was created. Now it says here a new plan with price underscore was created, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 here are actually our prices that we've created. So we've created 4 different prices, and they correspond to the yearly and monthly under starter and under our pro. And then I updated a product over here as well. I clicked into it and updated it. So if we click into one of our prices here, let's go into the pro monthly plan, you'll actually see that up the top here, we've actually got the price ID, and we can click to copy that. So we can actually edit things right up until we start using them. And once we've started using them, we're not actually able to edit them again. So once we've created our product and our pricing, let's go ahead and run through how this applies to customers. So jump across to customers here, and we can create our first customer. And we're just going to create our test customer, Jenny Doe. I'm just going to call her Jenny at. I'm going to leave that all the same. And for any Stripe test customer that's created, we can actually use a test card. So all you need to do is just go 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, and then any time in the future in any 3 digits. And I'll go ahead and add that card to Jenny. Great. So now we've got Jenny who has this test card. And on the right-hand side here, you'll also see this CUS. This is a customer ID. So this is a specific unique identifier to Jenny. If we scroll down, we can see a list of all different things here. A lot of them you probably won't use, but you will probably want to have a look at the events, the logs, the invoices that have been created, the payment methods, payments, and subscriptions. Depending on if you're using plugins within, for example, Bubble, or if you're doing the whole thing with API calls, or if you're using the customer portal, different things will be filled out in different ways. So if we jump up here and we search for customer portal, this is the customer portal that Stripe has actually created for us. And it allows users to be able to manage their own subscription without us having to do it for them. So we don't actually have to create all the logic and everything within our application. We can send somebody to the customer portal and they can do a series of different things. So for example, we want them to be able to see the invoice history. That's this down here. If I toggle it off, you can see that it changes live. Turn it back on. And then under customer information, maybe I don't want them to be able to edit their email address or even see their email address. Maybe I want to do that within the platform, our own platform. And under payment method, yeah, we want them to be able to change it. We want them to be able to cancel the subscription. Best practice is usually to leave cancel at to the end of the billing period and ask them for a reason. That would be a great thing to do. You can actually set a coupon code here to try to keep people on your plan. Now under here, we can actually say customers can switch their plans. When we allow customers to be able to switch their own plans, we have to think about the logic that happens from our application if we're assigning any credits or any specific feature sets to them and what happens there. We're going to allow this for now, and we're going to leave that unticked. And we can come down here and we can actually just find all of our products. Now, if you had multiple subscriptions, you probably wouldn't want to do it this way, because if you had multiple subscriptions, for example, you have people subscribing to your AI writing tool, and then you also have built into it some type of other tool, you probably wouldn't want to have both subscriptions here because somebody could switch from one subscription to two of the others, if that makes sense. But if you've got one subscription, then it is best to do it this way. And allowing people to change it within the Stripe customer portal is by far the easiest way to get started. Now, prorate subscription updates. I always leave this to invoice immediately. What this is asking you is if you want to refund the customer what they have remaining for the month, and if you want them to jump to the next plan immediately. So for example, if my customer was on the $49 a month plan and exactly halfway through their month, they upgraded to the $99 a month plan, do you want to charge them $99 plus half of the remaining month that they upgraded? So maybe like $115-ish, $120. Do you want to invoice that at the end of the month? Or do you want to invoice them immediately for the prorated change? And we want to invoice them immediately. This is the most common way of doing it for upgrades. For downgrades or subscribing to anything cheaper, people usually wait until the end of the billing cycle. And what that allows is, for example, if a customer signs up to your 1-year plan and within 6 months they decide they don't want to keep it, they click that they want to cancel the plan or downgrade to a cheaper plan, it actually doesn't cancel until the end of the billing cycle, or it doesn't downgrade them until the end of the billing cycle. So they get to keep the features of the yearly plan, the higher yearly plan, for longer. And what that means is that you don't have to prorata and actually refund them money or prorata any future payments. And here we can have a redirect back to our application. So you might want to have this to app.com, for example, myapp.com, or whatever it is that is your domain name. And once we're finished with all that, we can actually click save, and perfect, we've saved that. Now let's have a look at some of the webhooks that are within Stripe and what happens when things happen to a customer. So if we jump into a customer here, we can actually add their subscription just by clicking plus here, and we can add them to, for example, a $49 a month subscription. I'm going to leave tax off for now. You can set up automatic tax if you wish, but I'm just going to leave that for now. And we can set up automatic payment with that card that's on file, and it starts now and it goes forever. Now we can click create subscription and it will create that subscription. Stripe's actually released this new thing called phases, which allows us to have scheduling of different phases of a subscription. So we could have them, for example, be on this phase for a month, and then upgrade them or downgrade them afterwards. This is particularly useful when a user signs up to, for example, a yearly plan and then changes to a monthly plan. You want to schedule the downgrade of the plan. Of course, this will happen automatically if the customer is within the customer portal, but it will actually show up here under phases. We'll get to that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and create that. And straight away, the customer was charged the $49, which was succeeded. And you can see the payment here. Now we can see that the customer has an active subscription here. And similarly to everything else, you can click inside it, right? So once we click inside that subscription, you'll see at the top here, we have a subscription ID. Every single thing in Stripe has an ID attached to it, every single object. And this is particularly useful when you jump into the webhooks and you look at the events that are happening and you're trying to marry things up to different endpoints. So once we go inside the subscription, you'll see here that there's a price attached to it with a subscription item ID, another ID. This one you use a lot less. This subscription ID is usually when somebody's asking for a subscription ID, this is the one that you call on the most. If I scroll down, you'll actually see all the different events here and what's happened. So let's jump actually back to the customer for a second. We'll jump back to Jenny and we'll look at what's happened with Jenny. View more events, and it's taken us to the developers area under events. So under here, we can actually see that Jenny is a new customer. Then a setup intent happened. Yep. We captured the card details. Great. It succeeded. The card succeeded. And then we've got here the payment for the $49. We've got Jenny was charged. It was successful. All these different things happened. Invoices were created. They were finalized. The invoice was marked as success. Now I'm going to jump up into here and I'm going to actually search for Workbench and I'm going to opt into that. I highly suggest that you do it. It is wonderful. Once you set that up, this is a little tab that you can open and close at the bottom of your page. And if you're inside a customer, for example, it'll open up and expand this area. Now, it might look intimidating, but it's essentially the same as the developer area, which is if you search for developer, where we were before. So we've got here overall, which includes our API keys if we're plugging into any plugins or if we're doing any API calls ourselves. We've got here webhooks that we can set up, which we'll get into in a minute. And then we've got events here. And Stripe is extremely good at telling us exactly what's happened with every single event. And it's got the event data on the side here as well. So just like we were looking at before under Jenny, we could see the events. We can actually see all the events here. But the beautiful thing about this is that this actually shows us the exact event name here. So we've got here, for example, invoice payment succeeded. That is the event name. And so when we go into our webhooks, for example, we can actually create a webhook and we can search for that exact event. And if we tick this, it has a nice little description down here, occurs whenever an invoice payment attempt is successful or it has succeeded. Once that's ticked, we can go ahead and click continue, set up an endpoint, and we can actually send those events and the event data to a specific endpoint. And the nice thing about Stripe is that under the events tab here, it outlines exactly what events have happened within a customer or within an account. And so we can actually just refine this down and see here, you can paste, for example, event payment succeeded, and we can see every single event that event payment succeeded has fired. And it's only fired once, which makes sense. We've just created this account and it's only happened once. But what we can also do is we can jump in and we can actually copy our customer number. So if we jump back into Jenny and we copy this customer ID, come back here, remove that one, and maybe we want to paste in a customer ID and press apply. We can see it here. And we can actually paste in here the customer ID under resource and click apply, and we can see everything related to that customer. Now, there aren't too many things there. So if we go in here and we include related resources and apply, we've got everything that happened under that customer. So on the right-hand side here, we've actually got a little description as to each thing that's happened. For example, this one here is event invoices paid. So we've got here Jenny's invoice for this much was paid. Now, if I scroll down here, we've got some JSON, and within Stripe itself, Stripe actually allows us to click on each of these things that are individual objects. So we've got here, for example, our customer ID. If I click on that, we can copy the customer ID, or we can actually see in the dashboard the customer, and it's open up there. You'll see here because this is about a specific invoice, right? We've got here the ID for the invoice. And if I click show in dashboard, it'll take me to that specific invoice. And we've got here the link to the invoice. And similarly to the customer or the subscription, we've now got an ID on the side here as well. I hope this is starting to make sense how you would pass some information from Stripe to a code tool such as Bubble, for example. I'm going to jump into Bubble and we're going to go through some back-end workflows and actually catch some of those webhooks just to kind of show you the information being passed through and some best practices of how to do it. So if I jump in over here, before I do anything, I need to jump into, I think it's under general. We just need to jump into API over here and come down here and enable API workflows. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually allow other applications to send our app in Bubble some information. It's actually going to allow us to create some different endpoints, and we've got the endpoint right here. So let's go ahead and jump into our app. I want to go into the backend workflows. I'm going to create a new API workflow. If you're new to Bubble, backend workflows happen on server side, and here under your pages, you've got other workflows. So we're going to receive some information here, and what we're going to receive is anytime a subscription is updated, we want to receive some information about that subscription. So let's go ahead and create a workflow called subscription updated. Okay, I'm going to change this here to detect request data. I'm going to go detect data. Actually, before we do that, we're just going to tick all these things at the moment, and we're also going to tick include headers. So let's go request data. I'm going to copy this URL, and sometimes it doesn't quite copy properly, so we're just going to do it a couple of times until it gets it right. No, let's just copy it manually. There we go. So inside here, let's go webhooks, create a webhook. We're going to search for subscription updated. So we have here customer subscription updated. There's quite a few things here that sound very similar. Like for example, subscription schedule updated. But no, we want subscription updated. And then maybe also if a subscription is paused and a subscription is deleted. So we can send multiple events because they go through JSON. As long as we understand what's coming in, we're able to actually call on specific pieces of data and it should be fine. I personally prefer creating different endpoints for each of the individual things, but for this example, I'm just going to include all those things. We actually probably don't need pause. We're not going to use paused. So we'll have updated and deleted, and we'll click continue. And we can paste our webhook in here and create. Okay, great. So we've created the webhook in here in Stripe. We've got this one here, which says that it's waiting for some information. So we need something to happen to trigger it. We need to update our subscription. So let's jump into our Jenny customer. Let's jump into her subscription and decide for her that we're actually going to upgrade her from the monthly plan. We're going to remove that and we're going to actually take her to the yearly plan. So once that happens and that's updated, nothing happened. So let's jump out into here and we can go under events and we can see what the heck happened. So Jenny, let's refresh Jenny this is her subscription being created and this is her being upgraded from, here we go. And this is the great thing about Stripe. We're actually able to see what is happening. So if, for example, it doesn't go ahead like that, it allows us to actually go through the events and see, okay, so we've got in Stripe here, it says that she was upgraded from this price to this price from this price. And if I search this price, the 2 one, and we go down to Jenny's subscriptions, I think you'll find that's the same that's the same product there, the same price ID. So what happened? Under the delivery of webhook endpoints, there's a 401 error, which says that it failed. Let's click into it. It says here that it is unauthorized. And it says here, please upgrade your Bubble subscription to run the API calls. Perfect, okay. So now we know what to do. Give us a second. So now that I've jumped into the free trial of the starter plan, and I went into API and I've enabled the backend workflows, I can jump into here and let's go detect data one more time, and let's go ahead and update that subscription again. In fact, instead of updating the subscription, we can actually just come into that webhook and we can click resend the same. And now that we've resent it, there you go. It's come up with a 200, which means that it was successful. And there's a message from Bubble back to Stripe saying the endpoint subscription update was successfully initialized. And if I come back into Bubble here, we can see all of that information as individual items. Now, there's a couple of things you probably just want to change. You want to change the end date. Let's search for date. So we want to go into the current end and current start period and change it to Unix date, because that there is actually a Unix date. And if we scroll down to the very bottom, we can actually see all raw data. And this body here is the same as the request data. If I go back to the event here, it's the same as this here. But Stripe formats it nicely so that we're actually able to see the exact dates. For example, under here, we can click through to the different things. This here is a payment method. PM is payment method and all that kind of stuff. In Bubble, we get all these different entries, and once we save that, we can call on those pieces of information. So for example, when that happens, so we might want to do a search for a user. So now we've got that webhook. We need to change something in our database. So let's jump into our database and go through how we should lay out our subscriptions. I think the best thing to do is to create its own data type called subscription. And under subscription, you can have a couple of different things here. You can have a text, that's the customer ID. You could have a date, which is the start date. And this is actually the current start date. That's the start of this specific billing cycle. And then we might have another one that is current end date, and we might need to know which plan it is. So now we need to create an option set for our plans. So we're going to create an option set, OS plans. And under that, we're going to create two different options. We've got the starter plan and we've got our pro plan. And we're going to create a couple of attributes, and these attributes sit under the plans themselves. So we need a price ID, and we also need an amount, which is a number. Great. So under starter, we need a price ID. So let's go jump into here, and we're going to go into here, and I'm just assuming that we're going for the monthly plan, but you should probably do both. So I might actually, let's jump back into here and actually change this. So we've got starter monthly, and then we'll have starter yearly, and then we'll have pro monthly, and we'll have pro yearly. Okay. Make sure that they're all the same. Now this doesn't look very good to an end customer, so we're also going to create a text attribute. I'm going to call this label, and that's going to be the nice looking version of it. So if we jump back into here and we copy that price ID, and this is for the monthly starter. So this is called starter, maybe monthly, so that people know the amount is $49. Price ID is that. Go ahead and do the rest of them. We're going to do the starter yearly. So the label is starter yearly. The amount is $4.90. And there's our price ID. We've got our pro monthly, and we've got our pro yearly. There we go. Okay, now there's a reason that we're doing them as option sets, not just text that happens on the subscription itself. The reason that we're doing that is because we can bring in a lot more information about the actual product itself. And you might be wondering how we're going to select these different plans for the subscription. let's finish this off and then we'll talk about it. So we're going to create another one that's called status because we need to know if they're active or if they're cancelled or where they're at. And we need the user to have a subscription. Okay. So now let's jump back into our backend workflow. The subscription is updated. We're going to make a change to a thing and we're going to do a search for. We're not going to change the user, we're going to change the subscription now. And we're going to search for the customer ID. So the customer ID of this subscription that we're changing within Bubble needs to equal the request starter's customer. And I suggest that you go through and you actually have a look at the event here and read through each line and see and just kind of understand all the pieces of information in here. So for example, we have here under the object ID, the subscription ID, and we have here the customer ID. So that's the piece of information that we're calling on here. It would actually be a good thing to save that subscription ID as well. So we might go back into our database and within our subscription, we're going to create a text and we're going to call it subscription ID. Okay, search for subscriptions where that's the case, beautiful. So that gives us a list of subscriptions because there could be multiple people that have that. But we know that there's only one subscription per person. So we're going to go first item and then we're going to set up all of these things. Now I want to go add all fields because I want to do every single one. The end date is the request starter's end current time. Great. Current start date is the request starter's start current period. Customer ID is request starter's customer. We actually don't need to enter that one because we've already got it. You're probably wondering where we're getting that from, but we'll get that in a second. Okay, and then plan. So we have all these plans here, but we're not too sure which one it is. So what we can do is we can do a search for, and actually it's not that way. We get an option and we get all of them. And then what we say is we say filter it, whereby this plan's price ID is request starter's price ID. Now it has here plan product. That might be the right thing. Or we have here plan ID. That also might be the right thing. That's previous attributes plan ID. So that's the previous plan's ID. So if we go into plan product, we can actually click in here and we can go here and we can search for plan product and we can find, we have here plan ID under the object here, and that's what we're after. So the plan ID here. And plan ID is actually the same as the price ID. I don't need to save that. Let's go back here. I'm gonna go filtered by request starter's plan ID. And we don't want the previous one, we just want this one. Great, okay. That's gonna bring a list again, and we just need the first item because there's only gonna be one. The status is gonna be the request starter's status, and the subscription ID is gonna be the request starter's subscription ID. Or actually, it's just the ID because this is all about the subscription. So now that that's set up, if we ran it, nothing would happen because there's no users. So let's say, for example, we're using Stripe to create our users, or we're using maybe Go High Level, or we're using some sort of other software to create our customers. Of course, we could do it within Bubble itself. We could create a page and a sign up form and all that kind of stuff. But let's assume that we're using a different application to actually do the checkout page. What we would want to do is we would want to create another webhook, and the webhook would be for every new customer that's created. So if we go into here and we go created and we search for customer, we have one here that says event occurs when a new customer is created. So we'll go ahead and set that one up, and we need to jump back into Bubble and create another one that's created. Let's go customer underscore created. It's important that you never have any spaces here. And we'll tick all these boxes for now. We are going to come back and add some security in a minute, but let's leave that for now. We'll copy this again. Okay, come back in here and we need to initialize it one more time. So let's go ahead and go into customer and we'll create our second customer. Good old John. And whenever a customer is created, doesn't matter if there's nothing else on the customer, just a customer itself, it comes up here and we can go save. Okay, So now that we've got the customer created here, we can come into accounts and we can go into create an account for someone else, and we can enter in the email address of the person. Now let's jump back into Stripe and see if we can see that email address of the person. So we've got here, if we refresh the page, a new customer, John. And if I jump into our workbench under this webhook here, under events, we can see, let's remove that resource. So we've got here the customer created, and if we scroll down, do we have an email address for that customer? No, we just have a customer ID. We don't actually have a customer email address. So what we're gonna have to do is have a GET request, whereby we get the email address from, or the customer information from just here. What we're going to do is we're going to jump back into Bubble, we'll come down to Plugins, and we're going to install the API connector by Bubble. This allows us to do API calls within Bubble. So we're going to create a new one called Stripe. We're going to set up a private key in header. We're going to come up to our Stripe and we're going to search for API, or we can come down to here and go overview, and we can see our published key and our secret key. Now this is just test data, so I'm not actually using it for anything. And we can plug that private key into there. I believe it's actually this one here, the secret key. So I'm just gonna go manage, reveal secret key, copy that. Okay, I'm gonna type bearer space secret key, and then we're gonna expand this API call here. Now if we open up the Stripe documentation, this here is the Stripe docs, but then under here, under APIs, we can search for, and we can search for customer, for example, and we can bring up the customer object. And over here we can actually see to get or retrieve a customer, we can click here, and we've actually got a curl request right here, or we've got this URL here. So it's /v1/customers/the ID. But I'm just going to copy this curl request, and I'm going to come back into Bubble. We're going to delete this one because we don't need that anymore. Import from curl, paste that in there. Great. So this is a GET request of the customer, and I can either use it as an action or I can have it as just data. I'm going to have it as an action. So this is a random customer ID here. I'm going to remove that, put some square brackets, and put my customer ID here as a variable. Change it from private to public so that we're able to actually edit that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find that customer ID for John. So if we copy John's customer ID, come back into Bubble and paste it into there and initialize that call, great. We're getting all of the information about John. And you'll see here that there's actually no email address. Makes sense because we didn't actually create an email address for John. So let's say, for example, we create a new customer, John2, and John2 actually has an email address. Let's see if this one comes through. Okay, so now let's jump into our events, refresh that, customer was created, John2. And you'll actually see here that John2's email address was there. I just didn't have it in the first customer that we created. So yeah, that was a little bit of a detour. Okay, you'll see here though that for some reason we got a 404 error. And that's because we're finished with the initialization. So we actually need to go and remove that /initialize from the webhooks. So we jump into here and we remove that initialize from the end of the webhook and save it. And then we jump back and do it with the other one as well. That'll all work nicely. Okay, great. So now that that's all done, and we've learned also how to get information using APIs, but we don't actually need that, but we can call on that later if we do need. Let's jump back into our backend workflows, and we can go create user. I might have to reinitialize that call again because the email didn't come in because we didn't actually have an email. So let's reinitialize that call, copy that URL, come back into here, and this is just part of the backwards and forwards of testing applications and your workflows. Let's copy that, put it there, Save it. Okay, we're going to go into events, and we're going to send that last one that didn't go through properly one more time. Okay, customer not created, workflows and initial, yep. Let's jump back. We actually have to create a new customer because we've changed things now. So I'm just going to call him Fred, and we're going to have Fred at jackstudios.io. Great. All right, now that we've created a new customer, let's jump back into here, and we can see that there's actually a field for email here. So it's kind of important that within that first initialized step, you have all the fields that you would be using, because otherwise you're not actually going to be able to call on them later. So we're going to create an account for somebody, and we're going to use the request starters email address, and we're going to return the user if they already exist. Now we're going to change, we're also going to create them a subscription ID. So I'm going to create a new thing called a subscription, and we're going to set the customer ID to the request data's ID. There we go. And if we put that first, now in this step here, we can actually set the subscription to the result of step number 1. So we've created a subscription, then we've created a user's account and linked it to there. And then it's up to you, but you might want to send them an email with access, maybe a password reset or something like that. We're going to leave that off for now. But now we actually have a user that's being created from Stripe. So this allows us to create checkouts within any other platform, integrate it with Stripe, and then be able to use Bubble as our app, for example. Okay, so now let's run this and see if everything comes in. We're going to jump into our app data, and within our app data we don't have any subscriptions, and we only have one user here. So let's go ahead and create one more user. Before we do that, we need to go and remove that initialized one more time. So let's remove that initialized. Okay, now it will work. Okay, so let's go ahead and create Tommy. And now that we've created Tommy, come back into Bubble. That was instant. We've got here Tommy, sorry, not Bobby, Tommy. And we've got a subscription linked to Tommy. If I come into subscription, there's a customer ID here, which is EVT, which is completely wrong. So let's jump back into here. Let's jump into here. And where are we pulling in as the customer ID? The request data's body ID. So again, we can jump into that modified types, and we can see here, this is the event for the customer being created, not necessarily the customer ID. So if I search for cus underscore, I've got here body object ID customer. So we actually want the body object ID, that one there. Let's do it one more time. I'm gonna go ahead and create, we're actually gonna go create Bobby. Okay. So now that we've created Bobby, we'll jump back into here, have a look at our data, and we can see a nice customer ID here, but there's no information about them because they haven't subscribed to anything. And under users, we've got Bobby with the subscription. So let's now create a subscription and see if that flows through. So Bobby is going to subscribe to the yearly plan for Pro. Subscribe automatically. There's no payment method. Okay, add a payment method, add card. Okay, we've added the card for Bobby. Go into subscription, add the subscription, and great. He is now active on our yearly Pro plan. And if I jump back into Bubble, let's see if it all worked. Bobby, and we'll refresh. Nothing's happened. So it didn't find the right thing here. So let's jump across and see why it didn't do it. Okay, so let's see why Bobby didn't show up within Bubble. If we come into our expand workbench and we'll refresh this just to make sure we're getting the most relevant, the most reliable data, the first, so that we're seeing the most up-to-date data. We've got here customer subscription created, but there's no customer subscription updated. So if we go into our events again, under the event subscription updated, let's edit this and let's add in created. Subscription created occurs whenever a new customer signs up for a plan. Okay, so we've got here created, deleted, or updated. Let's try that one more time. And I'm just going to cancel this immediately, which actually probably should fire into here, I'm guessing. Yeah, it did, because that was the deleted one. So the deleted one fired, and we've got here the current end date, which is the 9th of December, which is today because we said immediately. The start date, which was today. It was the yearly pro plan and cancelled as the status. And then we've got the subscription ID, which is wrong here. That's the event ID, so we'll have to go change that. So we'll go down to our subscription ID. We're going to go into here and we're looking for a sub underscore, which is the body object ID. Body object ID. There we go. And you'll notice that multiple times I'm making mistakes here, and it's really just a backwards and forwards. I wanted to do the troubleshooting, the problem solving with you so that you're able to actually see a real life scenario of going backwards and forwards, working out what exact pieces of information we need and which of the IDs are the right corresponding IDs. So let's go ahead and now just remove the information out of Bobby's. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete. So now I've deleted all that information. Let's just pretend like Bobby has signed up to a brand new plan, and he signs up to, this time, the monthly starter plan, and we put him on a subscription. Okay, so he has an active subscription, and we jump in over here, and we'll refresh that data, and we have an end date, which is a month from today, which is the 9th, and we have here starter monthly. So it's found that plan nicely. We've got active, and we've got the right subscription ID here. Perfect. Now if the plan is deleted, it'll go to cancelled, or it'll go deleted, and it'll also be the same for any update that happens to the subscription. You're probably wondering how the customer can change their subscription through that billing portal, or the customer portal. Up here under the 3 dots, you can actually open the customer's portal yourself and see exactly what the customer would see. And this link would be fine to use for the customer, but we want this to be dynamic. So what I suggest, if you are using Bubble, is to go ahead and download the plugin that is under here. There's a couple that you can use. If you search for portal, you'll find a free, this one here, Stripe Customer Portal, free. Alternatively, you can just use the Stripe plugin that Bubble has released. That one also works really well, and also the stripe.js if you want to do a lot more powerful stuff as well. All of these are free. The Stripe.js one doesn't have very much support, so they all don't have a lot of support, but that one specifically is quite powerful, so you need to know what you're doing. I'm just going to go ahead and install the Stripe one that Bubble's created. You have to enter in your information here, and then what you can do is within a page itself, you can set up a button, and when the button is pressed, you do need the Stripe portal. Okay, so I've just installed the Stripe by Bubble one, but we're also going to need the portal one. So I'm going to go ahead and install this one here. We're going to assume that I've already entered in my API keys and whatnot. You have to enter those in the side here. And then once you've done that, you can go into a page and just have an action on a button that goes into plugins and goes creates customer portal. So you could do a current users subscription customer ID, for example, and then here you've got a return URL, so you can enter in your URL and they'll return the customer back here. So I'm not going to do that, but we're going to go into the 3 dots up here and go open customer portal just to see what that looks like. And here you'll notice that the customer is able to update their subscriptions, and they're also able to downgrade their subscriptions. So let's say, for example, they go from the starter monthly to the pro yearly. It's going to do that immediately. It's because we did invoice immediately and prorata the difference. So it's on the prorated amount and it just charges the card on file. Great. And then let's say, for example, the customer then decides that they want to, in 2 weeks, change their subscription and downgrade it. We can actually run a simulation here under the subscription, and we can bring the date forward by 2 weeks and advance the time. So Stripe's actually pretending like we're 2 weeks in the future now, which is a very cool feature. So now we're the 23rd of December, and if I refresh the page here, we go update subscription. I want to downgrade the plan to just the monthly pro plan. It's going to say that it'll update in 2025 because we want to downgrade them at the end of their current billing period. Now, if I click confirm, you'll see here, great, that's been done. And within the subscription itself, if I refresh this now, go back into Bobby, you'll see that there's actually a phase, an upcoming phase on the 9th of December 2025. They're going to be switched to the $99 plan from the $990 plan to the $99 plan. And this here can also be represented in your events as a schedule. So if we jump into here and we'll refresh it just in case, we've got here the time was ready. So that's the time clock that we did, the push forward into the future. Then we have here a subscription schedule created, updated, and then updated again. And this here is the customer subscription updated, and this is the subscription schedule updated. Now within Bubble, the best way that I've found to bring in a scheduled update is to actually go down on the customer subscription updated, and you'll see down here that there's actually a schedule line here, schedule sub schedule. And again, this is a clickable object that you can click within the schedule itself. So you might want to have, for example, in Bubble, a data type called as a plan and call it switching to, for example. And within the update, make a change to a thing, and it would be the same thing as step one, right? We want to change the same subscription, but we do want to change the switching to only when request data's schedule is not empty. Because if it's not empty, then we're switching to another plan. Now, you might be asking, how do you get the exact plan? You would do that in the same way as when we made that mistake with calling the get call on the customer. We would do the same thing, but we would do it to retrieve a schedule. So you've got here a schedule object within the documentation, and you have a retrieve a schedule, and you can call this curl here, and you can get the information from that schedule. So you input the schedule ID and you'll get all the information that you need about the schedule, including, if I go back here, including the different phases. So the first phase of a schedule would be the phase that they're currently on, and the second phase, or the second item, would be what they're switching to. So if I jump back into Stripe, for example, and we go into schedule updated and we scroll down, we can see here we've got phase 0, which is the current yearly plan that they're on. And then we scroll down to phase 1, and this shows us the monthly plan that they're switching to. So we can always assume that when a schedule is created, we can always assume that when a customer subscription updates with a schedule in it, that it's going to have two phases, because we're upgrading their plan immediately with Parata, and we're downgrading their plan by the end of the month. And so that's how you can deal with downgrades and know within your platform which plans they're switching to. There's a heap more within Stripe, and this is by far not a comprehensive guide, but I just wanted to run you through some of the troubleshooting that I've been doing within the last couple of weeks working with Stripe and Bubble, and hopefully this video helps somebody out there.